The Avalanche punched their ticket to the conference final in come-from-behind dramatic fashion, and another coaching change to report. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate. It is Thursday, May 14th, 2026. Vic and Neil with you for the second consecutive day. We open the show with a coaching change. Chris Knoblauch out after 3 seasons in Edmonton.
You know, it's always surprising when you see a coach get fired. Always. I'm never not surprised because you don't know when it's coming. Chris Knoblauch obviously made the playoffs all 3 years, 2 years going to the Stanley Cup final, and then this year losing in the first round, and then he was swept out himself. So sort of strange. This is Connor McDavid's junior coach from the Erie Otters, was coaching the New York Rangers Farm Club in Hartford when he got the call to go to Edmonton. Ken Holland was the GM at the time when he got hired to replace Jay Woodcroft. Ken Holland is now the GM of the LA Kings, who had ended the season with an interim coach by the name of DJ Smith, who they moved up from being assistant coach when they relieved Jim Hiller of his duties. Does Ken Holland like Chris Knoblauch's approach to coaching enough to give him a call to perhaps come to LA now?
We're going to get into not only Edmonton, but Toronto, who, of course, fired Craig Berube on Wednesday, towards the end of this show, because these are clearly two of the most intriguing head coaching situations going.
Oh, for sure. They're both in Canada, for one thing, so that's a big deal. One is the biggest city in Canada and the team that has been around forever and that everybody talks about, not only all over Canada, but all over the world. And the other team has maybe the 2 best players in the league playing side by side on that team. Certainly the number 1 player, I would think if you polled the world, they would come up with Connor McDavid. So that will be very interesting to see what direction Edmonton goes with their management group of Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman.
Well, let's not bury the lead here, because this game certainly deserves its just due. And the Colorado Avalanche joined the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference finals after a dramatic 4-3 overtime win over the Minnesota Wild on Wednesday. They win this series in 5 games. Zach Bogosian, who we know had already been playing hurt, unable to go in this one, replaced by Jeff Petrie. And by the end of this night, we could truly see, Neil, these injuries that had been built up over the course of the playoffs for Minnesota finally took its toll in a very big way.
Oh, absolutely. And attrition went on. And I know you're going to get to it, but some of their unlikeliest scored, which actually put them out in front in this game. It wasn't their superstars that scored, but by the end of the game, they were depleted for sure.
First shift of the game, it's Matt Boldy to Marcus Johansson at the 34-second mark. That made it 1-0, and then Boldy on a spinorama got stopped by Mackenzie Blackwood, who starts for the second consecutive game, keeps the score at 1-0, but just temporarily, because about 4 minutes after that spinorama, it's Nick Foligno driving to the net, converting a Nico Sturm pass to make it 2-0 for Foligno. He had 1 goal in 27 regular season and playoff games for the Wild after his trade from the Chicago Blackhawks. So he makes a big impact in this game, and he wasn't going to be done either.
It was perfect passing. And as I said, to be successful in the playoffs, we all know you need secondary scoring. You can't just depend on your stars. And the teams that get good secondary scoring, i.e., Carolina Hurricanes, they usually end up winning games. So it really looked at this point in the game like the Minnesota Wild were going to get to go back to St. Paul to play another game.
They almost made it 3-0 on a delayed penalty. It was Michael McCarron with kind of a centering feed that went off of his hand. And after review, the goal was disallowed. But not to be outdone, Sturm again hits the blue line, and his shot rebounds out to Foligno for his second of the game with 4:04 left in the first period. Bad rebound there by Blackwood and kind of a signature of what was to come in the intermission.
Well, yeah, because Blackwood clearly should have caught that puck. I mean, there was a shot on him that he didn't catch. He let it bounce right back out in front of him, and it's 3-0.
Between periods, Jared Bednar makes the change, and Scott Wedgwood comes in, and you can see right away that the pace I think we expected to see from the Avalanche at the start of the game began to take its shape in the second. They had a little bit better pace. Logan O'Connor missed from in close early on, but then finally, Brent Burns, who I thought was terrific in this game, takes a shot that is tipped in by Parker Kelly at the 11-minute mark, and it's 3-1.
And the Avs have some life now, and the building comes alive, and it was kept pretty quiet, obviously, with a 3-0 lead. But then, as you said, Jared Bednar went into his golf bag and decided instead of using his Blackwood, he would use his Wedgwood.
You've been waiting to use that for the entire playoffs. Well, Jesper Wallstedt continued to keep Colorado at bay as they continue to come on. Had to make a save off Jack Drury off a Devon Taves tip, and then Taves with a one-timer. Wallstedt able to turn that away. But then, as we get later into the second period, 3:08 left, and it's Cale Makar. Draws a penalty on Danila Yurov, but looks kind of uncomfortable. And we saw this late in the second and then carrying into the third period. And this became even more of a story in the final 20 minutes of regulation.
Absolutely. Well, whenever Cale Makar is not 100%, it's really noticeable because at 100%, he is unbelievably dynamic. And so, yeah, we'll hear more about this in the third.
Shot attempts in the second with 33-8 for the Avalanche. And so they're continuing to push here, but still Minnesota takes this 2-goal lead into the third period. I actually thought that for the first half of the third period, even though Colorado was getting chances, Minnesota was playing far more forward than they were in the second period.
Well, they probably talked between periods and said, we can't fall back with these guys. We've got to keep going forward. We've got to keep pushing forward, even though the score is 3-1. And that's what I think they were trying to do.
We mentioned Cale Makar, and midway through the third period, somewhat of a mild reverse hit by Matt Zuccarello, and Makar leaves the ice holding his right shoulder.
Yeah, and it didn't look good at that point. He left his stick on the ice and just skated off, went right down the hallway to the locker room.
Makar did return with about 4:45 left in regulation, and now here's where it starts to unravel for the Wild. There was an icing call against Minnesota, a play that probably should have been a simple chip, and instead it was sent all the way down. And off the ensuing faceoff, Jack Drury wins the faceoff, tips in Devontae's shot with 3:33 left, and it's 3-2, and here comes the uh-oh.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of uh-ohs, and, of course, in that building in Denver, there was a lot of yes, yes, yes.
Finally, with 1:23 left in regulation, all the pressure is on, all the plays in the Minnesota end, and Jake Middleton, who had a brutal series for the Wild, kind of gets caught in no man's land. Nathan MacKinnon has the puck, low circle, and instead of committing to perhaps cutting off MacKinnon and preventing him from taking his shot, he is stuck between MacKinnon and a possible recipient of a pass. Unbelievable shot, though, by MacKinnon, right past Wallstedt's right ear to tie the game.
In a spot in the net that couldn't have been more than 6 by 3 inches over the shoulder of Wallstedt. It was a uncanny shot. I'm sure MacKinnon, who practices this all the time, but I'm sure he just shot it as hard as he could and was looking to get it up into the corner, but probably wasn't seeing that hole over the goaltender's shoulder. He was just whipping it as hard as he could.
You're a former defenseman. How did Middleton play that in your eyes?
Well, I thought he should go to MacKinnon. I mean, McKinnon's the danger spot. He's got the puck. That's the danger right there. you got to go right to the danger.
Shot attempts through regulation, 81-44 for the Avs. And once again, this is truly indicative of the territorial play, particularly over the final 40 minutes of regulation.
They came on hard. The Avs did. It seemed improbable that they could come all the way back, didn't it? I mean, no matter how good they are, you get down 3-0 in the National Hockey League, you shouldn't be able to come back, but they did.
Early in the overtime, Michael McCarron fanned on a 2-on-1 with Matt Boldy seconds into the OT. Nathan McKinnon had a near miss on a backhand, maybe got a piece of the crossbar. And then finally, Kirill Kaprizov coming down with Boldy and tries a long cross-ice pass, which right away I started shaking my head that you cannot get that pass through there. Just too far of a distance to cover. It's broken up by Brett Kulak. And then Parker Kelly with a really great down ice pass. Marty Necas skates into it, circle the net, and then Kulak comes up, receives the pass from Necas, one-timer, series over.
It's amazing when you go back and think that Kulak started the season where? He started in Edmonton, was part of a debacle of a trade for goaltender swapping with Pittsburgh, ends up in Pittsburgh for just a little while, and then is shipped over to Colorado for Sam Girard by the Penguins, ends up scoring the series-winning goal for the Avs. I mean, it's quite a season that Kulak has had.
Nice resume. You start with McDavid, then you play with Crosby for a little bit, and you end your season with McKinnon. That's pretty good.
And Makar. Yeah, it's real good.
So, as we had said in this, Middleton got kind of caught chasing the play back, was nowhere in position to intercept the pass, ended up -7 in the series. And here is where we really saw these injuries to Minnesota manifest themselves, because we had said at the top, they were without Bogosian. Of course, they were without Jonas Brodin. They were without Joel Eriksson Ek. And as you said, this is where the attrition really kicked in. And we're going to find out more about these injuries in the coming days, just how serious they were. But yes, I picked Minnesota in this series. And I believe that if this team was at full strength, at least manpower-wise, everybody's hurt at this time of year, they could have won this series. I thought they stood up very well to the Avs for the most part throughout the 5 games.
Well, the reality of the situation is we'll never know. And the Avs did win the series, and they move on now to play the winner of Anaheim Ducks and Vegas Golden Knights.
Before we're done with this series, here's my TV gripe of the night. And I let TNT slide because on Friday, they had a long interview during a power play of Game 2 of the Montreal Buffalo series with star NFL player Rob Gronkowski. But on this one, they missed the handshake that I wanted to see, because we all heard the prior game that Michael McCarron had called out Josh Manson, saying he's a dirty player, he always has been, and those were the 2 players I wanted to see. And TNT got to them just as they had separated.
You would think that that's the one that's so obvious that you want to see. I mean, so obvious in this one. How do you miss that?
You realize that everybody is fair game for me. I don't play favorites here.
No, you don't. I just hope you never come after me.
Stay in my good graces. Thursday schedule, both games on TNT, Montreal and Buffalo. That series tied at 2 apiece. That game will start at 7 o'clock. I still thought that in defeat in Game 4, Montreal still carried the play to Buffalo. And I thought their execution was a bit off, but that speed factor is still there. And I believe that that is something that Buffalo still has to address heading into this important game on Thursday.
So do I hear that you're taking Montreal tonight?
Yes, but I was really looking forward to hearing your analysis before we made our pick.
Well, my analysis is that I think that Montreal has played extremely well ever since the third period of game one. Buffalo found a way to win game four. Kudos to them. Perhaps they're going to take parts of their game in Montreal, remember it, bring it back to Buffalo, add to it. I think it's going to be tough for Montreal to win game five on the road in there. I think because Buffalo's learned some things from Montreal. And I think that the Buffalonians will win this game.
I still think the Sabres need to play deeper in Montreal's zone and for far more time than they have thus far since the third period of game one. The late game, Vegas and Anaheim, game 6 with the Golden Knights leading that series 3-2. Supposed start time is 9:30, but we know that's not going to happen. News coming down on Wednesday, defenseman Braden McNabb for the Golden Knights suspended for this game for his hit on Ryan Poehling in Game 5. There is no timetable for Poehling's return. As a result of this, it is expected that Caden Korczak will replace McNabb in the Vegas lineup, and Jansen Harkins may come in to replace Poehling unless Joel Quenneville decides to go 11-7 if Captain Radko Gudas is ready to come back into the lineup for the Ducks.
Yeah, this is going to be a big loss for Vegas. I know that they were able to play without him in the last game when he got the 5-minute penalty and a game misconduct, but he is a very important guy on their D-core.
I have a feeling we're going to be picking different on this game.
Well, why don't you go ahead, and I'm sure you're going to pick with your buddy, but I regress. Go ahead.
I'm actually going on a hunch here because Anaheim has certainly played well enough to force this to a 7th game. This is clearly a hunch pick and nothing more, but I think Vegas is going to close this series out. Again, we don't know what the status of Mark Stone is. Maybe they will hold him out for a game 7, possibly, and get him a couple of days more rest. Of course, we don't know what that injury is. I just have a feeling on Vegas.
Well, you and Craig both had Vegas in 6, so it doesn't surprise me that you would pick Vegas in this game since this
Why
is
would you
game
even
6.
think that came into my thought process?
Because you like to be right. However, I think that Anaheim will win this game and send it back to Vegas for a game 7. So I'm saying Anaheim. You're saying Vegas. You're saying the 2 road teams will win. I'm saying the 2 home teams will win. Let's see what happens.
You notice one of us is really willing to take risks here?
I know I am.
Yeah, sure. That is just not true. All right. Let's talk a little bit more about these 2 coaching changes or firings that we've seen over the last 24 hours or so. Mentioned at the top that Chris Knoblauch out in Edmonton, and that's right on the tails of Craig Berube out in Toronto on Wednesday. One team, their window is closing. The other team's window seems like it has been somewhere in suspended animation for the last 59 years. In your opinion, Neil, from a GM perspective, what type of head coach can win in these 2 environments? And we'll start in Edmonton because, as you had said earlier, Chris Knoblauch was Connor McDavid's head coach in Erie. And it seemed like there was some influence by McDavid when he came over to Edmonton. And now this apparently has run its course. Who can succeed there with McDavid now on a 2-year contract and the sands in the hourglass starting to fall?
That's a really good question. What kind of a coach do they need to coach this team that's got 3 or 4 superstars and then they don't have a lot of good depth? They're going to have to find that in the summer. They don't have goaltending. They're going to have to do something about that in the summer. What coach can come in and do a better job than Chris Knoblauch did? I don't know. I don't think there really is anybody that can come in and do a better job than Knoblauch did. I think once again, just like with the goaltending move, they're just shuffling deck chairs here. I don't think Chris Knoblauch did a bad job. I think Chris Knoblauch is a very cerebral coach, very restrained in behind the bench. I thought he did a wonderful job those first 2 years. They didn't have a good regular season this year, but was that his fault? I don't know. Maybe Paul Coffey will be the head coach.
Well, let me throw this one out at you. Could Craig Berube be a fit there?
I don't think so at all. This is sort of another Toronto, right? You've got the Auston Matthews, you've got the Mitch Marner, you've got the Nylander, but the names are different. Draisaitl and McDavid and Bouchard and Hyman.
I think there's more sandpaper, though, with this Edmonton team that could embrace a Berube type. And with that, I wanted to switch over to Toronto because when we spoke to Doug Armstrong a couple of years ago, and we asked about the adaptation in Toronto, the question was how is Berube going to adapt to the players in Toronto? And Armstrong said to us, no, it's the players that are going to have to adapt to Berube. And we've heard this saying so many times, and not just in hockey, but in all walks of life, that sometimes in order to be successful, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's something that I don't think the Toronto players and the core four and all of that, I don't think that that is something that they ever adapted to and still haven't.
I don't think so either, but I look at it the opposite way. The coach goes in and is given 25 players and has to do the best he can with those players. So it's more the coach adapting a game plan and a design to the personnel that he has. You can't walk in and say to a group of artists that are sitting in the room, we want you to all now be bricklayers. Like, it doesn't work. You know, they're artists. They're not bricklayers. They're violinists. They're not construction workers. I think Bruce Cassidy will end up in one of these spots. Who knows which one? I think he's going to end up in one of them. I think the easier job, not that either one of these is going to be easier, but I think that the easier coaching job is going to be in Edmonton than in Toronto. I think Toronto is going to be a nightmare.
Well, you have more inherent success with that team having made the Cup final the last 2 years. So they know what it takes to get to that last hurdle.
Most of them do. I just think you've got more to deal with, to work with in Edmonton than you do in Toronto, which doesn't take a rocket scientist to say what I just said, because Toronto hasn't been anywhere near the final, whereas Edmonton has. But I just think the Toronto situation is such a cluster. To be successful in Toronto, and success means make the playoffs next season, I guess, you're going to take a very talented guy to do that.
I didn't even have to edit that cluster comment there.
That's how I usually say it. I just say cluster. I don't. Do you say it a different way?
No, keep it clean. Keep it clean. Final item for today. Calder Trophy was awarded on Wednesday, and to little surprise, it was Matthew Schaefer of the New York Islanders beating out Beckett Seneca of the Ducks and Ivan Demidov of the Canadiens. Jakub Dobeš actually finished fourth in the voting. Schaefer, the youngest player ever to win the award by 1 day over Nathan McKinnon. He is the sixth Islander to win the award and the second straight defenseman to capture the Calder, with Lane Hudson of the Canadiens winning it last year. That is only the second time in NHL history that defensemen have won the Calder in consecutive years. The only other time, Ken Douglas with the Leafs in 1963, followed by Jacques Laperriere of the Canadiens in 64. I saw Laperriere play. I had gone to see if I had actually seen Douglas play. And it turns out that he was a member of the Oakland Seals when I saw my first game in 1968. And it turns out that he played the game before and the game after my first game. So I think he was spiting me, an 8-year-old kid at the time.
Let me add a little bit more to this Calder Trophy thing. If I was a rookie in the league next year, I would want to ask for number 48. I've never seen this before. No one has talked about this. But when have you seen consecutive Calder Trophy winners wearing the same number 48? Lane Hudson and now Matthew Schaefer. The other thing you didn't mention was that Matthew Schaefer was a unanimous pick by the voters as the Calder Trophy winner.
You know, I have to leave some things on the buffet table for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The award was presented during the third hour of Good Morning America on Wednesday. He has been living with former Islander Matt Martin, so his family was present there. And later he was joined by his dad and his brother as the trophy was being brought out. And, of course, this has been an unbelievable couple of years for Schaefer. He lost his mom to cancer a couple of years ago. He's been in touch with the Foligno brothers because they had gone through the same thing with their mom. He has become an ambassador for Hockey Fights Cancer, and he is just so involved in wanting to help people that are dealing with this terrible disease. And you know how important it is because you are involved in the mental health area, as is your wife. And to be able to reach out and help people and hear them and share stories is just so invaluable.
It is. And one thing that you left on the buffet table for me on this part of this conversation was that Matthew Schaefer also lost his billet mother, meaning the lady who owned the home that Matthew Schaefer was billeted to while playing for the Erie Otters. She passed away while Matthew was there. So that's a pretty big thing for a 17-year-old to handle, losing someone right in the house you live in, and also later than your own mom. And the only way that you can find some peace in your mind is to talk with others who have been through the same thing and shared experience. Shared experience is so important when you're trying to get through mental anguish. And so good for the Foligno brothers. I love that story. I hadn't heard that Schaefer had been talking to them. But getting back to the hockey part of this, I think we all knew that Schaefer was going to win Rookie of the Year. He had a tremendous season, tying Brian Leach for the rookie goal-scoring record. Just a fantastic young man who's going to have a great impact on Long Island and the Islanders for a long time.
Has grown up very quickly, and of course we continue to look forward to seeing his career evolve. So congratulations to Matthew Schaefer on a well-earned award. Reach us individually at Neil at NHLWraparound.com or myself, Vic, at NHLWraparound.com. We're on all podcast platforms, so leave a review. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please subscribe. You can also find us on X, Instagram, TikTok, at RayDATV, and on the Buzzer platform, BZZR.com. Our website is NHLWraparound.com, and the traffic over the next few days. In addition to this show, we're also dropping the Utah Mammoth spring cleaning on Thursday. That will appear on Quick Takes. Stanley Cupdate on Friday. We'll go over the two games from Thursday. There are no games Friday, so we will drop the Tampa Bay Lightning spring cleaning on Saturday, Stanley Cupdate on Sunday, and then depending on when the Montreal Buffalo series ends, we will have our conference final preview either Monday or Tuesday of next week. So, on behalf of Neil, I'm Vic. Enjoy the two games Thursday. We'll talk to you Friday.